Oh, hi there. I'm Kat. Thank you for joining me for Chat with Kat. We're going on a journey and having conversations with people from a variety of backgrounds and experiences. And during this journey, we're going to probably laugh and smile. We'll have moments of compassion and cry. We may be angry or feel confronted, and we may be amazed and just need to ponder. So, whatever the emotion is that comes up, let's take a moment to breathe and ask ourselves why we're feeling this. And also, let's ask, what can I learn from this? So go ahead and like, share, subscribe to this, and make sure that your friends and family and colleagues and anyone you feel could get something from this gets to see this. So let's get on with our journey with Chat with Kat.
All right. Hi, Sean. It's so good to see you. Thank you for joining me here with Chat with Kat today.
Hey, Kat. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, of course. My pleasure. So I know we know each other through our self-perfected group, and I don't know if we've actually met at an event in person or not, but for people who don't really know who you are, maybe just tell us a little bit about who you are.
Okay. Man, that's kind of a loaded question. The last time I was asked this question, it was by somebody who was like, "Well, tell me about your past," and I don't mind that at all. Well, I am. My name is Sean. I live in North Carolina. I grew up in a small town. I guess it's small in comparison to a lot of big cities, but for North Carolina, it was at one time it was the third largest metropolitan area in the state. It's Winston-Salem, North Carolina. We have the unenviable position of having a nickname of Trey Four, which is a slang for 34, and that's named after the voting precinct in that area. Um, I grew up there through a series of events. Ended up moving to Buffalo, New York. Lived there for a few years, and then living in Baltimore, Maryland, and then moved back to Charlotte, North Carolina. Um, have lived there since 2011. Um, uh, I'm a father. I'm a divorcee. Was married for 27 years, and now I'm just navigating my way through this portion of life with adult children, and and still friends with my ex-wife.
Mm. Oh, good. Well, that's actually, I mean, that's good that you can say you're still friends with your ex-wife, because I know a lot of people, when their relationships end, they want nothing to do with the other person. So is there something in particular that allowed you to stay friends with her after deciding to separate ways, or?
Um, well, I was actually just talking to a couple people about this the other day. One, he wasn't married, but he was getting over a 4-year relationship, and another, she was actually divorced. And I was like, well, what I recognized about us is that she was actually somebody that I shared life with for nearly 30 years. I was at one point in life, I was head over heels in love with her. So when I look back at that, um, it's not like I should sit and think, okay, I hate you now when we share so many years together. You know,
Right.
a lot of people have the mentality that, oh, I gotta hate this person now because we're split up, or because we're we got 2 children together. They're adult children, but we've got family, we've got history together. So
Mm-hmm.
uh, you when I look at it that way, it's like, okay, there's value in that. So since there's value in that, then we need to find the best way to remain at least cordial. The
Mm-hmm.
second thing, excuse me, my voice. The second thing is that when I look at life, period, especially at my marriage, I have responsibility in it to make it work. I also have responsibility in it for it failing. Well, not really
Mm-hmm.
failing, but ending. I hate to use failing when it comes to a relationship, because
Mm-hmm.
they end regardless, whether it's through death or
Mm-hmm.
separation. But um, when I look at it that way, it's like, okay, what were my responsibilities? And I own my responsibilities, and same with her. She has to own her responsibilities. So when it comes to that, it's just, hey, find a way to be human. to be, especially what's best. Because at some point, we're gonna not only do we share children, we will at some point we'll share grandchildren too. So,
Right.
Yeah,
and you're going to be at the family events and seeing her. So if you can make a good relationship still after the fact, then all the better for everyone, right?
absolutely. And coupled with the fact that I want her to have the best. I don't want her to suffer for anything. I want her to live every dream that she possibly can and have the best health and everything. I mean, to me, it's crazy to wish ill on somebody because they're not in a romantic relationship with you anymore.
Yeah.
That's like the epitome of selfishness to me anyway.
Yeah, and selfishness in a bad way, because I think when there's different ways people talk about selfishness, where there's the good way where you've never put yourself first and you're putting everyone else ahead of yourself. So you got to be selfish and take care of your own health and your well-being as well, so you can be effective with other people and in your own life. But then there's the selfishness in the bad way where you're only putting yourself first, right? And not thinking about anybody else's concerns. So I think there's, we need to distinguish which way of being selfish here, and being selfish in a good way. So, yeah.
Actually, that was one thing that I had to deal with, and I'll tell you the backstory of this in a minute. But that was one thing that I had to deal with in this process is recognizing what is selfish and what is not selfishness. Like for instance, what you were describing, where you put everybody else ahead of you and you take care of everybody else. Sometimes husbands, wives, but especially parents get to that place where they want to take care of everybody instead of taking care of themselves. And I was actually in a therapy session some years ago. We were talking about this very thing, and it came up that how when you're on a plane and they tell you if the oxygen masks come down, so first you help somebody else, and also if you're performing mouth to mouth resuscitation on someone, you have to take a breath before you give them a breath. So you have to take care of yourself before you can take care of somebody else. With the example of the plane, if you don't put the oxygen mask on yourself first, there's a possibility that both of you could pass. Both of you could die because you didn't take care of yourself first. As a parent, you have to make we're like, okay, I've heard people say, well, I'll make sure my kids have clothes before I have clothes, or I'll make sure my kids have food before I have food. Well, how are you going to feed and clothe them if you don't take care of yourself first? So it sounds noble, but in reality, it's idiotic. You have to take care of yourself first before you take care of somebody else.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I remember, years ago, people asked why we weren't having kids. This was back when I was married. And I was like, we can't even take care of ourselves. How can we take care of somebody else at this point, right? When you're thinking about it's a struggle to pay the rent or it's a struggle to pay this bill every month, the last thing I personally wanted was to add another being into this existence and say, now, how do we take care of them? How do we provide for them if we can't even do it without some stress for ourselves, right? Obviously there's stress in life, but so that was why, way back in the day, why it's like, no, I got to get stable. And I didn't even know the whole emotional stability at that point. I just knew, physically, financially stable. I have to have something there before I can think about, somebody else, right? So yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. And even more critical is what you just mentioned, is having emotional stability or mental stability. Most parents don't have it. That's why when we do have children, we're not stable ourselves, because we're still fighting through everything that we've been programmed with. And we're at an age where we don't even recognize. Nobody tells us how to raise children. I don't, well, they'll tell us, well, you're not doing this right or doing that right, but nobody ever gave me a manual before I had kids to say, hey, this is what you need to do to raise your children. Also, nobody told me how to be an adult or how to be a husband. Nobody actually gave me, and of course we don't, but we typically in our families, we have the ability to tell somebody when we think they're living incorrectly, but we don't teach them how to live correctly.
Right. And usually that's because we don't even know, or that person doesn't even know themselves how to do it correctly, right? I mean,
Yeah.
my example of a marriage and relationship was not great, right? I mean, to think that a wife was always yelling and screaming and berating somebody was a good way to be was not a good, effective way to start a relationship. And I had to do a lot of self-growth and discovery on my own before I even got into this group to find out, like, oh, that's not the best way to be a partner to someone. Oh, okay, I need to learn how to be a good person and how and what it really means to be in a partnership with somebody. Because I certainly went into it not knowing, and it was not, it didn't work out well, right? So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, I guess I'll tell you the backstory about how I found this group. Um, and I really have to go back to 2014. So I found out about Self Perfected in, I think it was 2022. Um, actually, I'll start there and then I'll go back. So I no, actually, that won't make sense. I'll start it. So 2014, December 22nd, my stepfather passed away. He had Parkinson's disease, but he also had a series of strokes. He had like 6 or 7 strokes before he actually passed away. It was kind of expected, but still really can't prepare for it. And a year later, my mom passed. A year and a month later, my mom passed away on January 12th, 2016. Hers was sudden. She had heart disease, but her passing was unexpected. In fact, I had convinced her to come and live with me and my family. Because she was at the house by herself, and I talked to her every day, and every day we talked, she mentioned how much she missed my father, my stepfather. And the only reason I say stepfather, so you know the nature of the relationship, is that I can tell you a little more about my history. In 2017, me and my now ex, we split up. And in the summer of 2017, we split up. And 2017 was like a really, really, really dark place for me because of all of those things. I didn't realize how much that affected me. Even then, yeah, I was emotionally, you can call it emotionally stable, but really what it was is I just wasn't dealing with my emotions. Right. I was being the man. I was taking care of my family. I was paying my bills, but I was not expressing my emotions. I wasn't understanding my emotions. I was just suppressing because I was extremely depressed with my parents passing, and then with the relationship at the time, looking at it like it was failing. And my son was living with me. By choice. I expressed to his mom that he's 17 years old, and any problem you have with him, you're just going to end up calling me anyway. So just let him. He can stay with me, and we could deal with that. And you come over as often as you want. I wasn't going to keep him away from her.
Right.
So one day I came home from work, and I got a bill in the mail. I was fully, I was working full time, but this is like the straw that broke the camel's back, if you will. So got a bill in the mail, and it was only $200. It's only $200. And at that time I was, making close to, 6 figures without bonuses and everything. So I should have had the money to take care of it, but the money just wasn't there. And it just spiraled me into, all of these pent up, unexpressed emotions. It just spiraled. So that particular day, I had a bottle of Jack Daniels in the cupboard. So I poured me 2 fingers of Jack and went in my room, closed the door, and sat on the edge of the bed and just thought all the wrong thoughts, like all of the failure thoughts were just there. And the thought that really took over was, I've got a life insurance policy that could take care of my kids, and it can take care of, my wife. And I'll get relief from all of this bullshit. And that really is, plus the alcohol didn't it wasn't really positive effect either.
Right.
I have a got a few guns, and I had a 45 that I kept in my nightstand, and I took it out, kept it in the case in the nightstand, took it out, was looking at it. Didn't put the magazine in, but the thought was I could end all of this right now,
Mm.
um, and find some relief and take care of everybody, and end everybody's financial problems. And
Mm-hmm.
the thought was also she could find somebody that makes her happy.
Wow.
Um, and almost like somebody was sitting in the room with me, the thought crossed my mind was like, okay, so you do it. Who's going to find you?
Mm.
Who's going to find your body? My son would, because he was living with me.
Right.
Um, so at that point, I recognized I couldn't. But I also ride motorcycles, and people have accidents and die in motorcycle accidents every day. So that wasn't that thought didn't cross my mind right then. It was actually a few weeks later. So I devised a plan that I would take a ride to the mountains on my birthday weekend, rent a yurt or a cabin, do some fishing, take a bottle of Jack Daniels with me and some cigars, and enjoy the cigars, do some fishing, enjoy the weekend, and on the way back home, just ride off the side of the mountain. End it
Mm.
all. Nobody would be aware of what I did
Mm-hmm.
as far as being, suicide or anything. My it took me a while to be able to talk about this too. I told nobody. My therapist was the first person that I had told about this, and I specifically chose a therapist that wasn't uh, a psychiatrist. They didn't have a PhD, so they couldn't prescribe me medications because I
Mm.
didn't want medications. Um, but through having conversations with my kids, like one, I was sitting at the table with my son because we had dinner together every day, and he says, nothing towards that because I didn't speak to them about it. He was like, "Dad, I know
Mm-hmm.
you and Mom are going through some things, but I'm glad you and I can have this time together because I know our conversations would be different if she was at the table. Like he could
Mm.
open up, be more of a boy
Mm-hmm.
or a young man." And one other time, my daughter was going to, she was in school in Greensboro, which is about an hour and a half north of Charlotte. She calls me and was like, "Hey, Dad, can you come up here?" And I'm thinking, okay, what's wrong? She's like, "Nothing's wrong. I just hadn't seen you, and I want to see you." I'm like, well, she wanted me to come up that Saturday. I was like,
Mm-hmm.
I got this and that planned, and you know how it is. When you got that daddy daughter relationship. She kind of had me wrapped around her finger. We actually used to do
Mm-hmm.
daddy daughter dates when she was in her teens, and
Mm-hmm.
that was her trump card. She was like, we hadn't done that in years, and so I was like, okay, I'll come up. And we went and got some burgers and had some ice cream and stuff. And she says, how did she put it? I don't remember exactly how she put it, but the um, it was basically to the extent that I like hanging out with you. Whenever I need anything, I can call you and ask. And I really don't know what I would do without you. Right.
Mm.
Not that I had, like I said, I hadn't spoken to her or my son about, or anybody for that matter, about what I had planned on doing. And this was still in the summer. So the job I had at that time, they had an employee assistance program. So I decided to take advantage of it and started therapy.
Mm.
Um, I know a lot of people, they knock therapy and stuff like that, but if you're not talking about it to anybody or you don't have the tools to process
Mm-hmm.
or to cope with it, then do it. I mean, it's a start, right? Don't
Mm-hmm.
keep it bottled up. And that started me on this journey. That was
Mm-hmm.
in 2017. Um, in that process, I picked up some, better coping mechanisms. I started
Mm-hmm.
journaling again. I used to do that when I was younger. I started journaling again. I started, one thing that was really, really helpful was just taking a moment and, um, and just being grateful. I know this sounds cliche now, but like in the morning, just getting
Mm-hmm.
up and finding at least one thing to be grateful for. And many mornings it was just the fact that I slept indoors, right?
Mm.
That was only, I'm grateful for having the income to be able to have this apartment so I don't have to sleep outside. And that was really all I could find. And then it was more things like, I'm grateful for my health, and the list started to grow. And I thought about it. It was one thing my grandma used to say all the time is, count your blessings. She was really religious in church and all that stuff. And she sang this song, Count Your Blessings, name them one by one. Count your blessings, see what God has done. And that was one thing we talked about in therapy, is like a lot of times people are depressed because they're focusing on what they don't have instead of what they do have. And not really comparing it to what other people have or what other people don't have, but just being grateful for where you are, both good and bad. Because ultimately every experience we have is one we created, and this was before the group, but I didn't. The accepted and allowed came later after learning about this group, and Techno Tutor and VIP Lite, all of those tools. But one was created by me, or I helped facilitate it. That's one thing that I learned, is that the problems I had in my relationship, the good things that I had in my relationship, I had a big part in making it that way. At least 50% of it, if not 75 or 80% of it. The other thing that I learned was taking extreme responsibility, right, for things that I felt like were in my control, and even things that I felt like weren't my control. One thing that I learned was it may not be my fault, but it's always my responsibility. Like a lot of times we think, okay, if I take responsibility, then I have to take blame. No, it's not true. It's like if you were abused, or if you were molested or anything, that's not your fault. It definitely isn't. Think about it this way: if I'm walking down the street and somebody trips me and I fall and break my arm, right? It's not my fault that I fell because somebody tripped me, right? It's not, and I could go to the doctor and get the bone set, and I could sue the person and they could pay for it, but ultimately it's my responsibility to heal from it. My body has to go through the process of suturing the bone back together and making sure proper blood flow and all of that is taken care of, but it's ultimately my responsibility to heal. Many people walk around with emotional wounds, not scars, but wounds. They walk around with emotional wounds, not healing, because they're not taking the responsibility to heal. There's a big difference when you think about a person. If you saw a person, in the street that had, a big gunshot wound, and it's 5 years old, it's still a wound. You think of the state that it would be in, and you would look at that as like, oh, that's gross, right? But if you see them 5 years after they've been shot and they've got a scar, you may want to hear the story about that scar, right? I had a motorcycle accident. I don't know if you can see these are scars. I had a motorcycle accident, and some right here too, in 2012. And everywhere those scars are, it was like white meat. It was just, the skin was gone. And people were grossed out of it. It was like, look at the scars, and people were, oh, that's nasty, right? But now, when little kids see the scars, even little kids, they'll see, oh, can I touch it? Is what they'll say. Can I touch it? Does it still hurt? It's like, no. And then they want to hear the story. What happened? So they're intrigued by the scars, but repulsed by the wounds. And many people are walking around with wounds and wondering why people around them don't want to be around them. It's because they're bleeding on everybody. So it's our responsibility to heal, not just for ourselves, but for everybody else. So this, all of this time has represented the process of healing, and in that process, I started a group. Me and Veronica. You know Veronica, right? So we started a group even before we discovered this, where we were listening to the Your Wish is Your Command audio. She actually gave me the audios, And she was like, "Hey, you might find this interesting." And at the time, I still have my motorcycle maintenance business, but I had that business, and in the afternoons, I would go in a trailer that I had and would work in a trailer, working on motorcycles, and I would listen to these audios. And it was Kevin Trudeau, and the first day I listened to the audios, and in about 3 days, I listened to the whole series of audios. And in about a week, I listened to it. I think I listened to it like the whole series of audios. I listened to it like 3 times. And I called Veronica, and I was like, "Hey, we gotta share this with other people. This is like some good stuff. It's like we can't. This is something we really can't keep to ourselves." So she was like, "Well, what do you think we do?" I was like, "Well, we can invite people to listen to the audios, and then take a week, listen to one recording over and over again for the week, and then meet on a day and have a Zoom and discuss what we heard." So we did that, and in the process, the group kind of grew to about 15 people, and I was on Facebook. I started, joining Kevin Trudeau groups because I wanted to learn more. Because I was in the place where I was leading the group, I was actually leading the discussion. And in one of the groups, Vianney actually reached out to me. And that was about as far as it went. We talked about it, and that was as far as it went. And I didn't think any more of it. And then maybe about 6 months to 8 months later, a kid. I say kid because he's only 21 years old. His name is Bryce Broomfield. I don't know that he's actually, well, I know he's not that active. I stay in touch, or try to stay in touch with him. But he reached out to me and invited me to come and listen to Self Perfected. But he also talked to me. He actually wanted to be a part of our group. He reached out to me and said, "Hey, what do you think about being a part of a mastermind?" And that resonated with me because I was also reading Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. So that resonated with me. And I was like, well, yeah, that'd be cool. I'm already a part of a mastermind. We meet at the time we were meeting every Wednesday. And he was like, "Oh, cool. I'd like to join." So he ended up joining our calls. But I talked to Veronica about it because we were both leading the calls, and she was like, "I'd like to know what he's selling." She's kind of intuitive about things like that because she's like, I know he's selling something. So long story short, he ended up talking to, well, I guess not really long story short, long story longer maybe. He ended up talking to us about Techno Tutor. And Veronica jumped all over it. She became a distributor and also getting the product. So I started, I ended up getting the product, and I wanted to take my time to find out what it was all about, to see what effects it would have with me, what I benefited from it before I could speak intelligently about it to anybody else and, be a distributor.
Right.
And started doing DIP Light, the writing process. That was very, very helpful because it helped me start digging more into my emotions and learning more about that. I was already on a path, is what I'm getting at. I was already on a path, and this kind of just resonated with me. This self-perfected group, and got on a call one Friday evening, and it was like, yeah, this is really good. Now I have to admit that I was a little judgmental because everybody, and I mean everybody that was on it was young enough to be my children, right? And I'm like, okay, so why am I listening to these people? Why is what they're saying so interesting? And why does it make sense? They're young enough to be my kids. But one thing that I've always espoused is that truth doesn't matter what age mouth is coming from, right? Truth is truth. Wisdom is wisdom. So I continued on, listened, and paid attention, and let the ego go, right? And and using TT and the other parts of the processes, TT, DIP Lite, reading the blogs and listening to EQUAF, the audios and stuff on EQUAF. That's every question answer for everyone. That's been a really great experience, and it's enhanced my life a lot. The first group event that I went to was in San Diego a few years ago. That's when I met Avery and Cameron, and saw a lot of people face to face. For some reason,
so we probably did meet then, because I did go to San Diego.
Okay, yeah, we probably did.
Yeah.
And I don't know what it is about Drake, but that guy just grew on me. Like he's got this way. I think what it is in a way, I see myself in Drake, right? He's got a lot of qualities about him that I recognize that are in me as well. So part of my life before all of this stuff, I went to seminary for a year. I actually went to Liberty University in Lynchburg, Virginia, studied biblical theology and all that stuff. And I actually, at one point in my life, I thought that I wanted to. Well, I shouldn't say thought. I was planning on being a preacher. And the reason I say thought is because that calling was actually my mom's calling. She wanted that for me. And I also played sports at Liberty, which was partly why I went there, was the opportunity to go there and play sports, but also to study theology. What I found through through that experience, not just that experience, but my experience in being a Christian. I don't knock anybody's religious views or anything like that, and I don't try to proselytize or I just live my life, right? At one point, I was that guy that was you need to repent and all that stuff. I was that guy, but for the most part, what I found is I was just judging people, right? And I was still struggling myself. What I know has been my experience that everybody thinks they have the answers, right? Everybody thinks, okay, I've cornered the market on the truth. I can go and tell everybody. But what we all really are doing is just trying to figure this life out, right? We're just trying to figure our way through life, and even with the raising children, venturing into marriage, or venturing into marriage, raising children, being an adult, being a functional adult, finding our way through success, or any part of life, we're trying to figure it all out. So on the spiritual side, I don't judge anybody else's experience, because I don't know for 100% certain that what I have is the truth or what anybody else has is the truth. It's just what I understand to be, from my level of understanding, from my level of education, right? To what I perceive as the truth, and I say perceive with intention, because life is really just perception. Our interaction and understanding of life is just our level of perception. So prior to that, I started a life of giving, if you will. What I did, and what still resonates with me, is being able to support young people, because just with this philosophy, Frederick Douglass said, it's easier to raise men, or raise how do you say it? It's easier to raise men than it is, or raise boys, than it is to repair men. You have think about it as a tree. It's easier to bend the tree and direct it the way you want to, or the way that it should go, than it is to a young tree, than it is to try to correct an oak, a tall oak. You got to cut it down at that point, or let it be. So in life, if we can help children avoid the pitfalls and learn about life and help them direct themselves um, before they get the hard wood growing on their lives. It's a
Mm-hmm.
lot easier.
Mm-hmm. Wow. So I mean, that's an incredible journey of like getting to this point where you're like, okay, I need something else here to look at, because obviously what I'm doing is not working well in my life, right? So,
Yeah.
um, and so, I mean, you've been with the community for a while now. So what differences have you really noticed now in your life? Like, what's changed for you since before you were really doing this?
Um, so I never viewed that anything or that what I was doing in my life wasn't working. What I viewed
Mm-hmm.
it as okay, this is working, but I see that this can add to it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what I've learned in this community is that um, the biggest thing is that the education part, and what
Mm-hmm.
education is increasing my vocabulary, not just for the not for so I could just have a word bank, but that those words actually become part of me, so that
Mm-hmm.
my experience in life is better, or more profound.
Mm-hmm.
Like when I think about it, is especially using the Techno Tutor tool. Um, Trying to think of a good example. Something that's because I don't want to just give, like you said, I don't want to give a lot of my personal experience. Um, you know what? Forget it. This is one thing that I'm working on is being more open. So one thing that I noticed in my marriage is that um, I was afraid to disappoint. Right.
Mm-hmm.
I was afraid to um, do what I thought was hurting someone, even if staying in that place, letting things be exactly what they were, um, was not the best.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So it was okay. Let's keep the peace instead of doing what's best.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but it was costly. So peace sometimes having peace sometimes is it costs too much, and it sacrifices what's best. So um, taking responsibility, like in a relationship, I could take responsibility, but I could only work on my portion of it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I can only fix my portion.
Mm-hmm.
In order to have a healthy relationship, whether it's a romantic one or just a friendship, each person has to work on the things that they are responsible for.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where the accountability comes in. So if you don't hold a person accountable for the things that they're responsible for, you're not going to have a healthy relationship,
Mm-hmm.
regardless of the nature of that relationship. So um, in this community, I I see it a lot. And it's a buzzword. It's called calling somebody out, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, I see a group of people that one they're focused on being responsible. They're focused on doing what's best for all,
Mm-hmm.
but they're also open to being held accountable. And I think that's a beautiful thing, um, because we have blind spots. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I have blind spots, and it's based on my level of understanding. Right, I have blind spots because I have either a blockage or um, I just don't see it. And
Mm-hmm.
is ultimately it boils down to that one having the base vocabulary, but
Mm-hmm.
also having the language. So even though, like for instance, I can have the words in my vocabulary, but I don't have the context for that particular area, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I still don't see it, but somebody else does. and they have that language for that context, and they can help me be enlightened. They still can't see it for me. They still can't make me see it, but
Right.
they can give me the context of those words for that particular situation. And I see
Mm-hmm.
that when I see it every Friday on because we have the self perfected, and then we have the support call afterwards,
Mm-hmm.
where people actually can support one another to improve. And that's a beautiful thing about this community. It happened when when I was in San Diego and communicating
Mm-hmm.
with other people. It happened when I was in Miami. The like the late night talks. It's cool when you sit up to 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning with somebody and no alcohol is involved.
Mm-hmm.
When you're just talking about things you experience in life, or just talking about a particular subject,
Mm-hmm.
and you could be in that space and just listen, and not be in awe, but you can listen and be like, you know what, that makes a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm.
So, but the biggest thing that I've learned is one is being responsible, but also being open to being held accountable.
Mm. Well, I'm just taking that in because that's one, it's true, but two, it's also just something very profound, right? Is, being able to be responsible for something, even, and like when you even going back to your earlier point of like being responsible for something, even if it's not your fault, right? But who you are in that moment and how you behave to it, and having to do your own healing from something. So, yeah. Wow. I mean, it's a lot to take in for people, I think, and especially people new to this conversation. They might have to hear this a few times, right? Because I think a lot of, at least how I grew up with, was responsibility also had blame associated with
Yeah,
it, right? So if I
yeah,
was responsible for something, it also meant I was wrong for doing something.
yeah.
So, um, and I think that was a big lesson that I had to overcome too. But hearing that out of a context like this is probably going to be something very new for people.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
What's crazy about what the blame part? It's like we tend to look at life because, well, just because of the programming. It's like, who broke the cup? Who spilled the milk?
Mm-hmm.
And it's, oh, your fault. It's your fault that you spilled the milk. Um, and I remember one time, and it was when my son was maybe 4, and he knocked some milk over. My daughter was, fussing at him for knocking the cup over. And I,
Mm.
I walk in the kitchen. He's standing there, and I was like, I asked him, I was like, "What's wrong?" He's like, "I spilled the milk." I was like, "Okay, well, just clean it up, right?
Mm-hmm.
We got a whole jug of milk in there. We could refill the cup. Just
Yeah.
don't let it sit on the floor." Um, I didn't think about it until really just now, because I didn't care that the milk was spilled, or whose fault it was that it was spilled.
Right.
All I cared was just clean it up so it doesn't become a sticky mess on the floor.
Right.
But a lot of times in life, you think about it, when a person is on trial for a crime,
Mm-hmm.
they want to establish motive. They want to, like, like, for instance, somebody kills somebody. Okay, what was the motive?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and really, all it is establishing blame. I'm
Mm-hmm.
not, getting deep into that, but
Right.
the most part of our lives, we're really just walking in blame, which is simply guilt.
Mm-hmm.
And in every part of our life, well, not every part, but a large part of our lives, we're controlled by that thing of guilt.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Our parents, they control us by guilt. Our society, or the society controls us by guilt. You think about it. You want
Mm-hmm.
something nicer in life. You want a car,
Mm-hmm.
or a nicer car. Well,
Mm-hmm.
you should be satisfied with just the car you drive. You should be happy with the amount of money you make.
Mm-hmm.
You hear people say it all the time. It's like, well, how much money do you want to make? Just enough to get by, or just enough to be comfortable. And
Mm-hmm.
the reason we say things like that is because we don't want to appear, I'm greedy. right?
Right.
And that's just guilt, right? That's just guilt.
Hmm.
When you think about it, if you apply that to something like your health, well, how healthy do you want to be? I'm just healthy enough so I'm not in the hospital every day. Or how
Right.
smart do you want your kids to be? I'm just smart enough so they're not dummies, right?
Hmm.
So, but and it doesn't make sense when you apply it to that. It only makes sense when we apply it to finances. You
Right.
know, I want to be well. If you're a good person and
Hmm.
you're doing good things with your money, doesn't it serve to say that if you're doing good things with $100,000, that you would do even more good things with $1 million?
Hmm.
So why wouldn't
Yeah.
you, as a good person, want to be as wealthy as possible so you can do as many good things as possible?
Right.
So,
Yeah.
but the what motivates that mentality is guilt. You
Hmm.
know, so if we can get away from being guilty, we can,
Hmm.
and that's kind of a slippery slope because when you think about, because it's like, oh, I'm not guilty for, for hurting somebody.
Right.
That's kind of a slippery slope. But I guess what I'm, well, not I guess, but what I'm getting at is if you
Hmm.
can eliminate the idea of guilt for simple things and not
Yeah.
being, I guess, not being manipulated by guilt,
Hmm.
then we can make moves in life that are a lot more positive.
Yeah. And I mean, it's good that you're talking about guilt and association with finances and like, how we put this or our society puts this guilt on us about having too much money or being too successful or, then you're a bad person. Because I've often said to people who, are not, who are friends of mine from other parts of my life or whatever, and we'll have a conversation about money. And they're always like, oh, these people should be doing more of this and these people should be doing more of that. And I said, okay, but let me put it this way. If these people weren't driving around like in the big cars or having these businesses that they're employ thousands of people in their own businesses, they're giving huge donations to the hospital so they can go buy equipment that's much needed to help save people's lives. They're donating to universities and schools. Now, as we know, there's education, but being able to provide even books or knowledge or in a way that's more accessible for people if they don't have access to it, right? Or like for anyone who's saying, well, they shouldn't. Why do they need to drive this big fancy car? Or why do they? It's like, yes, but them having this car means that there's at least 10,000 people who have a job and are making good money. So if
Yeah,
you don't want that person to have that car, that means you're also saying you don't want at least 10,000, 100,000 people to have a job either.
yeah,
And you would like them to be
exactly.
broke and without money. So it's kind of one of those things. It's like, as much as some people want to have this perspective of money is evil and bad because that's what they've been programmed in the society to have, to think, and about the guilt of having it. It's also the other side you have to look at is who's affected by that, right?
Yeah,
Hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people have a quality of life and have jobs and have maybe pensions, if that still exists for people, or healthcare or whatever it is, because of these things, right? So it's kind of like if everybody wasn't having, and there's that saying that you should go around and flaunting like, oh, I'm so wealthy. And no, you should be who you are as a person is reflected back in how you behave when you have money, right? Because you're
yeah,
the same person when you're broke as when you're rich, right?
yeah,
It's the same,
yeah,
like how whatever your values are and however your beliefs are about people or things or your judgments, it's going to be the exact same. It's just amplified when you're,
yeah,
so
yeah,
it's
absolutely.
yeah, that's my mindset. Like where I've come from a long time and thinking is just like, okay, but let's look at the person. Who are they as a person, not as the thing that they're having, right? But
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. i- just to speak to that point a little bit, it's like we always say things like that when we look at a person driving what we consider is exorbitance.
yeah,
It's
like
like,
driving a
okay, there's
$100,000 car, right?
right, right, but the average person doesn't look at it like that when somebody's driving a $30,000 car, right?
Mm-hmm.
But having a $30,000 car is, compared to the rest of the world, is a rarity.
Yeah.
Like the good majority of people can't even afford a car. They can only
Mm-hmm.
afford a wagon that they're pulling,
Yeah.
right? So a $30,000 car to them is like, oh man, you're rich because you can afford a car that costs more than 3 times my salary, or well, maybe not that, but it costs more than my salary a year.
Mm-hmm.
So you're rich. But
Mm-hmm.
people don't look at it. Our society doesn't look at it that way because that's the average.
Right.
Actually, that's even below the average. The average person in America drives a $45,000 car, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh,
That's
wow.
about
Okay.
that.
Yeah.
I'll don't hold me to that. That might be an incorrect stat. So, but um, when you think about it, we look at people that we consider extremely wealthy and say, okay, you're driving that car. You could have bought, a cheaper car and bought a bunch of other cars for other people. And it's like,
Mm-hmm.
well, you could have bought a car for $1,500 and bought,
Mm-hmm.
if you got a $30,000 car, you could buy a car for $1,500 and buy a bunch of other cars for other people as well.
Right.
But we don't apply that there. I guess I should say it that way. We don't apply it there.
Yeah.
And yeah, it just, looking at it that way, I guess we change our perspective or perception, when we
Mm-hmm.
look at it that way.
Yeah. And I think that's really, I mean, a big point of, at least for me, with doing the, the self-growth and development work and going in this way, it was, first off, it started off for me because I was like, I need to figure stuff out because I'm obviously not doing things well and things aren't going well in my life. So I got to figure something out here. So that's how, getting into the, the track of it. But I think as we progress, it's more about, it becomes more about like, okay, now that I'm getting things more figured out for myself, how do I help other people figure it out too?
Yeah.
At least for me, that's my perspective. It's, I'm certainly not there yet, right?
But that's a noble perspective. It's like, okay, I found food. How can I help somebody else find this food? And you think about it, a vast majority of the people are so poverty. They have a poverty mindset, or they're like, okay, a scarcity mindset. That's what it is, a scarcity mindset. It's not enough to go around. So in order for me to have a job, somebody has to lose a job. In order for me to have this dollar, somebody has to lose that dollar. But I see it in this community. It's a win-win. The idea is to make a win-win situation. And when you have that, you recognize when in this group, you recognize that there's an abundance, there's an overabundance. The rest of the world moves in a fashion like, okay, there's not enough to go around, and the universe itself speaks differently. If you're in Cabo, what are there avocados? Are there avocado trees there?
I mean, some, yes, but it's funny because
Or any fruit tree?
Yeah, any fruit tree. I mean, like pineapples, oranges, you name it. We even like all kinds of vegetables, root vegetables and stuff too. Like everyone's surprised, like, you have carrots and potatoes? Yeah, we do. We have carrots, potatoes, pumpkins. Like, yes, we have all of it here. So, and then we got the mangoes and pineapples and bananas and oranges and all the other fun stuff. So avocados, of course, like staple.
Yeah. So when you go out and look at a banana tree, you don't look at that banana tree and that banana tree is like, okay, I'm only going to produce 1 or 2 bunches of bananas, and because I don't want everybody else to look at me like I'm making too much, right?
No, it gets big and huge, and it's actually, I mean, if you look at some of these trees, if you just let them go, they get so big and they'll produce so much fruit, you just can't even reach it. So
yeah. Exactly, and that's the universe we live in. Everything in every plant, every animal, except humans. Every plant and every animal tries to produce as much as they possibly can. We don't. We try to minimize what we produce based on the environment we're in, based on the people we're around. So I mean, that saying goes, you're as wealthy as the 5 people you hang around the most. But I think it's even broader than that. We're as wealthy as the community we're in, right? And that speaks to this community, right? This community, even though not everybody is, super successful or incredibly wealthy, I see people having abundant lives, right? like the kids in this group. I look at the kids and I'm like, oh, this is so cool. I'm at the place in life where I'm looking forward to grandchildren.
Yeah.
No more kids. I'll be 55 this year. No more kids for me, but I'm in the place where I'm looking forward to grandchildren. And when I think about the possibility of my grandchildren, I want them to be as abundant and as successful in everything that they do. Even this is the way I look at my children. I want them to be as abundant and as successful as they possibly can. My son plays basketball overseas. Right now, he plays in Dominican Republic.
Wow.
And my daughter, she's a tutor, but she has her own business, and she's actually going to school to get her master's degree in some form of mathematics. She'll tell me, and it's funny because she talks to me about things that she's studying, and I'm like, okay, baby, I appreciate the fact that you think I understand what you're talking about, but I have no idea what you just said to me. But, yeah, and when I think about the possibility of my grandchildren, I want them to be as again, as successful and as abundant as they possibly can be in every area of their life, not just finances, but in everything that they put their hands to. And I see that in this community. I see it with people who have children, people who are just really just moving through life. And I think if somebody embraces the principles, and it's the principles. It's not just being in a community, but it's the principles that bolster this community. Everybody embraces those principles. I think I think there's a major possibility for somebody to have an abundant life.
Yeah. And yeah, you're right. I mean, not everybody here is in the terms wealthy success at this point, but I think so many people have had success in relationships and success in solving problems in their life and overcoming things in their lives that's a huge success right there, where it may not have shown up in the finances for them, but it's showing up in all these other ways. And those ways may not have been as possible for them to the extent that they are now, without the community and support and the tools, right? So yeah.
I was talking to Avery in San Diego, and he said something, and it was so cool to just be sitting around the campfires or the fire pits and just talking. And he said something I've heard before, but it never really resonated or never really landed until I heard him say it. He was like, emotional stability comes before financial stability, right? Emotional stability comes before financial stability. And that's a simple statement. It's a simple statement, but it is so true. And you can expand that to everything else. Emotional stability comes before financial stability. Emotional stability comes before familial stability. Emotional stability comes before, really anything. You could apply it to anything else in life, because if you don't have emotional stability, you don't have stability, so it makes sense. And it's like simple statements like that. My dad used to say things like, my dad never, when I say my dad, I'm talking about my stepfather. He never graduated from high school. He could barely read. He was a garbage man most of his life, right? But he had a really strong grasp on common sense. And I think that's what we miss a lot. And that's what the vocabulary does, is because really, honestly, life is really just, how can I, okay, so you and I, we're talking over computers or phones, which is a small computer. And really a computer is just it's a series of switches, it's transistors, it's on and off switches. And the processor is a bunch of, millions of billions of on-off switches. And they operate in they operate in such a way that the switch itself is a simple thing, but it's so many of them, and they do so many functions that we can now have this conversation, a video conversation over a computer that's processing a bunch of data, And that's what life is. It's a bunch of simple principles that when they're compounded, they make such a profound difference in our lives. And that's what I see as helping us grow, is to help us to master those simple principles.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow. Yeah. And I think it took a long time for that to really hit in. Like when you go back to talking about like the principles and with like what Avery said about the stability, that emotional stability, that actually was a hard lesson for me to learn. And it took a long time for me to learn it. And so,
Yeah.
I mean, I think like a lot of people I've talked to, when they don't have the emotional stability, they've had to have something really big happen in their life before they took action and went, okay, I got to solve this because this isn't working anymore. And that was, I mean, for me, that was my situation. Absolutely. It's like something, I had to basically fall flat on my face financially for me to like go, okay, this isn't working. And now I had the tools, I'm using them, but I wasn't going deep. And I was like, okay, now I got to really do the deep work. Right. But, yeah. But you're right. Like it seems so complex, but it's really very simple. Doesn't mean it's easy though. But it is actually a very simple, coming back down to the basics, doing the work, putting it into place. Like the tools are simple. It's not this thing that you don't need a PhD to do any of this, right? So, but
well, yeah, absolutely. You don't need a PhD to do any of this. You just need to do the daily steps. So at this point, I am as far as like the financial stability. I want to speak to that, because like just looking at it, and maybe looking at somebody looking at this interview will look and say, oh well, he must be doing quite well financially. I'm nowhere near where I want to be financially, but some of the things that I've been able to do as a result of this group is one. Is getting out of my comfort zone, and I mean getting way outside of my comfort zone, and doing things that may not have been like, okay, I'm going to do this. I own a nutrition club now, and that's part of you see Herbalife. That's a business that I'm in, but I own a nutrition club where we basically feature these products, and before I would have taken the most secure way of doing it and just saying, okay, I'll approach it by working with somebody else. Right. Even my motorcycle maintenance business, I started that business with other people. Right. This started by myself. I started, on my own. And the biggest part of and this is where the emotional stability comes in. It's so even though I've been on this process and been doing these things, I found that I relied too much on other people. Instead of you need people to move or to grow, but I relied on other people instead of saying, okay, if I get it done, I got to do it. And that came from a place that I didn't have the right amount of self-trust. I trusted myself a little bit, but I doubted myself most of the time because it was, okay, I'm afraid to make a mistake. What's the cost going to be if I make this move? What's how bad is my head going to hurt if I make this move? So, in starting the nutrition club, venturing out on my own and doing it on my own, I recognized that there wasn't a lot of self-trust. And when I didn't trust myself, remember, that's part of emotional stability, right? So whenever I would hear the voices of doubt, it's like, yeah, you're right. I wouldn't consciously think that, but subconsciously I'm buying into it. It's like, yeah, you're not that great. you're gonna fail. You're gonna fail. You're gonna fail big time. And because that self-doubt was there, um, I would end up making moves. I would start something that looked successful and it sounds successful and it could really be successful if I just stuck with it. I would cut it off because it didn't work out the way I wanted it to, as much as I wanted it to, or it costs more than I planned on it costing. So it would be a self-fulfilling prophecy. Okay, this isn't going to be that successful, and it wouldn't be that successful because doubt or lack of self-trust would make me quit on it too soon. You know, so at this point right now, I'm learning, or I've learned, stay with it. Not until you see it succeed, but stay with it until you make it succeed. And a lot of times I think that's what we end up doing. We end up failing not because it didn't work. We end up failing because we didn't make it work. Right? So making it work means, like you were saying, mastering the small things, mastering the principles. They, you know, it's not hard, but it's I forgot how you worded it, but it's basically the principles are easy, but you know, the larger part of it is more difficult. But if you just stay with the one principle, and really sticking with it means, okay, I see that this didn't work. The overall thing was okay. I'll give an example. I started doing these bottles, going to basketball courts and soccer fields and stuff like that, and selling bottles of hydration, electrolytes. And it worked out well. And I calculated, okay, it cost me this much in gas to get there and blah, blah, blah. And I sold this amount. It's like, okay, let me regroup and figure out. And I went back to regroup and never went back out. So of course it's going to fail if I don't go back out. But instead of regrouping, finding out what worked and what didn't work, basically it's that self-evaluation process. Finding out, you know, evaluating what works and what didn't work, and stop doing the things that didn't work and focus on doing the things that did work.
Right.
And then going back out, taking my ass back out. Right, going back and doing it. I didn't get back to that going back out. So now it's okay. Let's okay. So I took my notes. I wrote down, you know, what worked, and focused, and now okay, let's go back out. So I got a new cooler, got some bottles, and I'm going back out. And that's the thing is I think that's what we end up doing. Why we don't succeed, or why we don't ultimately succeed, is because we look at the failures and say, okay, then I'm afraid to go back out. I'm afraid to do it again. Okay, look at the failures, eliminate the things that didn't work, but get your ass back out. Go do it again. You know, it's a book. It's titled "Go One More." You know, just go do it one more time, one more rep, one more call, one more phone call, one more. I know it's a lot of people who are TT distributors. Just knock on one more door. You know, do it one more time. What do we have to lose? You know?
Yeah.
So that's the big thing. And what happens is when you do one more time, even if you don't make the sale, even if you don't get the result you want, you trust yourself. I trust myself more because I made a commitment and I stuck to it. And you start building evidence. You know, you start building cases for. I start building. I got to stop talking like that. I build more of a case for myself when I start. You know, when I go one more, because I've made a commitment to myself and I've kept it.
Yeah, and it's so important. Like the go one more, or you know, as I've been hearing a lot too in my work, is like 1% better. Right. And I think even in our group, we talk about being 1% better every day. We're working on being 1% better. And it seems like when you hear that, you're like, oh, how could I possibly? But I just heard something on YouTube the other day talking about specifically 1% better. And it just struck me because they said it was about, and I might have the name wrong, but I think it was Bushido, who was a Japanese warrior. And he became this like ultimate Japanese swordsman and was this master swordsman. But his goal was not to become a master swordsman. his goal was like, I suck at wielding a sword and I need to get a little bit better. And so every day he would do work just to be a little bit better. So he would, do whatever, sharpen his sword, a few more times. He would practice this one more technique, a few more times, like you said, one more time, a few more times, until he became this master swordsman. And it struck me because in my work, we always talk about being 1% better. Every day, work on being 1% better. And that just struck me because the analogy they said, not only talking about Bushido, but how you apply it to your own life is like, okay, if you set out to read a book for 5 minutes, read for 5 minutes more. Make it something that's achievable and attainable for that day so you can hit that goal. And now you're becoming that 1% better. And when I heard put it that simply, I was like, oh my gosh. So becoming 1% better in whatever it is in your life isn't this big, huge thing that is unattainable and it can't happen. It's like, okay, can I spend 5 more minutes doing this one thing? Can I read one more chapter in this book? Can I maybe, like you said, make one more phone call? Can I talk to one more person? Right? I mean, and the thing is that I've heard for a long time is that the answer's already no, unless you ask.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so that when you take that all together, that really strikes me as like, one, the answer is already no, unless you ask. So what do you have to lose, really? Right?
Yeah. Absolutely.
And then,
right.
But just being able to do one more, it's not that hard. Like one more thing, take one more step. If your goal is exercise, take one more step than you did the day before.
Yeah.
It's like yeah.
Incredibly. Let me go back a little bit. In 2019, I was 250 pounds. I had sleep apnea, high cholesterol, acid reflux. I was in the worst shape of my life. Right. I made a commitment to get fit. It was after a doctor's appointment, so I started the journey. I did keto diet, and I was walking. I joined the gym, but hadn't really started going to the gym yet because I didn't want to go to the gym and be embarrassed, right? Because I couldn't do much. So I started walking my dog. And the first day we went for a walk, it was like 5 o'clock in the morning, and I thought I was gonna die, right? Because we walked a half a mile from my apartment and walked back. When I got back to the apartment, I was sweating like I had run, a half marathon, right? That's how bad a shape I was in. And the next day, we walked the same distance, except I walked 50 yards more, and turned around and walked back. And the next day, another 50 yards. So I walked 100 yards more the next day, a couple of days later. Then it got to the point where my dog and I were walking 2 to 5 miles a day, and then running that 2 to 5 miles a day. I remember one day, it was in the summertime. My dog and I were walking, and I started jogging. My dog normally was like, lively and, pulling me and stuff like that. But that's why the first day when I walked, I was so exhausted because he was pulling me. And this particular day, we ran 1.5 miles. So instead of running out and then coming back, we just did a circuit. And got to the house. By the time we got close to the house or to the apartment, I had stopped and started walking. And my dog normally is out in front of me. He was beside me. He was just walking beside me, tongue hanging out and everything. We got to the house, we got to the apartment, go up the stairs, and he just plops down on the floor. Right. And I'm still feeling good. And I didn't pay any attention to it until like a few minutes later. He hadn't gone to his bowl to drink. I was like, dude, get up, get something to drink. And he just looked at me like, you trying to kill me, guy. So to speak to also the other thing is like, now I do around 150 push-ups a day. When I first started out, I could barely do 10 push-ups. So and the next day, 10 push-ups, the next day, 15 push-ups, the next day, 20 push-ups, so forth and so on. And to speak to that point, it's just 1% better, just one rep better. I think about Kobe Bryant. He used to play, if you don't know who he is, I'm sure you know who he is, but he used to play in the NBA. and he had this goal where he would make would make 100 shots, right?
Mhm.
Not take 100 shots, but he would
Mhm.
make 100 shots, and then the next day he would make 101 shots, and
Mm.
then 110 shots. So the idea was to make more and more shots a day until that shot was almost automatic.
Mhm.
David Goggins talks about that. If you want to get better, run a mile today, run a mile and a half tomorrow, or the next time you go running, run a mile and a half, run 2 miles after that. So you're increasingly getting better. And it gets to the point where you're okay, so you can't run a half marathon all the time, but get to the
Mhm.
point where instead of running 10 miles, run 5 miles faster,
Mhm.
right? Or your splits are faster. So you're continuously improving, and just apply that to every day of your life. Where can
Mhm.
you improve? Have daily improvements. Where can I have daily improvements?
Mhm.
This right here, this interview, this talk right here is a daily improvement for me.
Mm.
Because a year ago, I don't know how long you've been doing these, but I started hearing about them about 8 months ago, I think. But a
Mhm.
year ago, you never would have gotten me to do this.
Yeah.
No matter how much you said it would help people, whatever, it's like, nah, ask somebody else. I'm not doing that. Because it was too many things that I'm like, okay, I don't want to venture into bearing, or I don't want to talk
Mhm.
about, or I don't think I'm. The biggest thing was that self doubt or self trust,
Mhm.
right? It was like, okay, is does my message help somebody? And the simple thing is, yes, it does. Even if it's one person out of the group or one
Mm.
person in a million, if it helps that one person, then
Mhm.
it's been a benefit.
Yeah. Wow, thank you. You just hit something there for me. So thank you, because I didn't, you know, I guess what it is I don't realize I'm making an impact with people. I just felt that there was a need to share people's stories and I had to get it out there. But I never even took into the fact that I'm actually making an impact in anyone's lives, even if it's one life. So thank you for that, because that just struck me. So wow. Uh so oh.
You're welcome. I mean, I watched I've watched the various ones you've done,
Mhm.
and it's like, wow, okay, that was good. Otherwise I wouldn't have heard that story. I wouldn't
Right.
have heard that. Like the last one I listened to was the one you did with Valley,
Mm.
and just hearing that, it's like, wow, okay. Um, because I grew up, I've got a dog now, and he's like, because of the place I'm in life, he's the one I spend the most time with.
Right.
And it's, yeah, I can get along with people, but for a good while, I would interact with people, but I pretty much shut people out,
Mhm.
right? So that resonated with me on a level. So I definitely appreciated your wanting to do this and share other people's stories. Even though it's not your story directly, but you facilitated getting those stories out. And I mean, it's on YouTube, so it's going to
Mhm.
touch a lot of people's lives. So that's a kudos to you. Congratulations to you as well.
Oh, well, thank you. I mean, yes, I thank you for that. And honestly, I never would have even done this had it not been for the group, because it
Yeah.
was one of those things last summer. I guess it was the beginning of August or something. And I just said to the group, I have this crazy idea and I don't know why. I don't know how it came to me, but I just feel like I got to start sharing people's stories. Um, because I was hearing stories within the group and I was hearing stories out of the group with just things that were happening in people's lives that were, drastically changed something in their life, or something that they learned from an experience, or something like a good thing happened from a bad event unexpectedly, right? And I was just kept hearing this in sort of like in my world. And I was like, I gotta just share these with people. And I didn't know what that looked like. And the group was like, okay, so when are you gonna do this? I was like, I don't know. And they're like, well, you need a date. Give us a date. And I said, I guess in 2 weeks. I said, I don't even know how to do this. And they're like, well, figure it out. I'm like, okay.
Yeah, if you
So
don't
I
want to
mean,
do a thing, don't bring it up to the group.
oh no, yeah, because then they'll hold you to it, right? So,
Yes, yeah,
but
they will
that's the
hold
only
you
reason.
accountable.
Yeah, thank God for that, actually, because that's the only reason that I even started doing this, is because they held me to account. And I knew if I didn't do it, oh, they'd just be like, so how's
Yeah,
that going? So what's
yeah,
holding you back? Why aren't you doing
yeah.
it?
Yeah, you will be the feature of one of Drake's conversations on the TT call, right?
That's right. What's holding you back? Why won't you face this thing? Let's
Yeah,
dig deep into this. Let's go on.
yeah,
What's going on here?
exactly,
So,
exactly.
yeah.
You know,
So,
I haven't been in the full feature on one of those talks, but and that's the thing. It's like when you let your ego go, like
mhm,
right, when you stop being controlled by your ego, um, it opens an incredible world of possibility. Right. I mean, I know a lot of times we think of ego like, okay, this is a bad thing, it's a horrible thing. But
right.
what our ego is just really it's designed to protect us. That's
Mhm,
all it does. It just wants to protect us, and keeping things the same is what protects us. But if we get to the point where we reprogram our ego to
mhm,
be that protection is trying new things, being open to new things, and learning new things, really our ego becomes an ally. Um,
mhm,
and I know it kind of doesn't really stick with a lot of the things we're learning, but our ego, after all, is our ego. If we
mhm,
treat it as such and learn to make it do what's best for us, then we tend to get into autopilot and doing what's best all the time. And that's
mhm.
where the reprogramming comes into play. Um, again, when you got is have to be careful because Bernard has the audio. The audio is about the ego, and it's
Mhm.
smart. It's smart.
Mhm.
But when at least from my level of understanding, I understand that its sole purpose is to keep me safe or what it understands to be safety.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of times what is safe is actually keeping us back or holding us in a space that's not allowing the good to come in, right?
Yeah.
So,
Right, exactly, exactly.
yeah.
And I learned this. I learned this in another. It was a personal development, or it's actually human potential development program. It's called Vive. It was all in Spanish, and this is like me being a part of that got me out of my comfort zone because I didn't speak a word of Spanish then. I'm learning more Spanish. I'm a lot more fluent in Spanish now than I was then. But
Mhm.
all of the talks and conversations, they did have translators, but for the most part, it was all in Spanish.
Mm.
But one of the things that I learned in there is about getting outside of my comfort zone. Like a
Mm.
comfort zone is really like you think about a comfort zone. The ego is designed to protect you, but what it does is it puts you in a glass case, if you will. Like you can
Mhm.
see everything that's going on around outside of the glass case, but you can't interact with it. You can't really experience it.
Mm.
Um, but once you break out of the glass case, you're no longer protected. You're no longer
Right.
safe. But you have at that point, you have the ability to experience everything, both good
Mm.
and bad.
Mm.
And if you look at it like, okay, there's no good or bad, it's just an experience.
Mhm.
So I give it the emotional value of whether it's good or bad. Like when I
Mhm.
think about my parents passing away or, splitting up with my wife or my
Mhm.
brother passing away. At one point, I ascribed the value of being bad. Even
Mhm.
like my mom was the last one to pass, and I was like, "This is the worst thing that could happen." I wasn't ready for this. This is the worst thing.
Mhm.
But when I look at it, really, it was just an event. It was just something that happens to everybody on this planet,
Mhm.
and I gave it the value of being the worst thing that could happen.
Mhm.
But there were also things that were good that came out of it. She had a bunch of financial struggles.
Right.
She was lonely without my father.
Mhm.
And all of those things were cured, if you will, when she passed. She didn't have to
Right.
deal with her financial. I didn't know she had financial struggles because she never told me. I found that
Mm.
out after I was dealing with her estate, right?
Right.
Um, and she had heart problems that were greater than I understood, which is, after that she didn't have to deal with it anymore. So,
Mhm.
when I look at it, I could give it a value of bad or good, or I could just let it be an event.
Mhm.
And that's the place I strive to get to with everything I experience. everything in my life where it has no emotional charge at all.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm in command. So the emotional charge is blown off, and it's in my memory bank as just something that's recorded as a memory, but it has no emotional attachment to my life. So it doesn't
Mm-hmm.
affect me. It doesn't make me act a certain way.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's so true. Everything in life is an experience, and we give it the good or the bad, what it is. Yeah. And I think it's all, we've just been, I think, well, at least I can only speak for myself, but, my environment was that, and, if somebody passes away and you love them, it's a very traumatic thing, and it's a very awful thing. And no matter what your belief is on an afterlife or next life or whatever that might be, it's like this thing that you just hold on to for the rest of your life, right? That this really important person is gone, and I'm no longer, and I miss them, and I'm always going to miss them, and I'm always going to have this hurt and pain.
Yeah.
Instead of, okay, it is an experience that we all pass away, um, you know, but can I have this as be just an experience instead of just a trauma in my life, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Think about it this way. What I'm about to say may be inflammatory, okay? You know who
Mm-hmm.
Adolf Hitler is, right?
Yeah.
Um, when he passed away, do you think people were happy when he passed?
Oh, I'm sure there were millions of people who were happy when he passed.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you think there were people who were sad that he passed?
I think there's a handful of people who were sad when he passed.
Yeah, but it was just an event, and different people had different, they gave it different values. It was still just an event. A man
Mm-hmm.
died. And,
Yeah.
when you think about World War II, there were, hundreds of thousands of people who died.
Yeah.
And they were all events, not sounding heartless or anything like that, but ultimately what people did was gave those deaths value.
Mm-hmm.
And when you think about the history of men, people die every single day. Whether and some of them are just peaceful deaths where they died at home, in their sleep, and some of them are horrendous deaths.
Mm-hmm.
But ultimately, it's just something that we ascribe value to.
Mm-hmm.
And we ascribe the value based on our emotional attachments. And
Mm-hmm.
the problem with that is that we move in emotion. We're controlled by our emotions. But
Mm-hmm.
if we can get our memories and our thoughts to be our thoughts and not our emotions, that's when we gain power.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because we go from reacting to responding.
Mm-hmm. And it's interesting because this is a very specific cultural thing on how we deal with death, at like what I would say in the Western culture, right? Because I was just watching something the other day about how in Tibet it's because of the environment is so harsh, right? You can't bury people there. Like the ground is rock, and it's cold most of the year because you're up in the altitude, and they don't burn. But the way the Tibetans view it is their view is that you're a part of life and you're returning back to life. So let us return you back to be a part of life. And what they do is they take the body up to the top of the mountain at sunrise and let the vultures eat your body. And for them, it's not an emotional experience. It's literally their experience of death is literally you're just going back to give life to something else. You're part of this life in one form, and then you go back and give your life in another form to another form of life. And I thought, well, isn't that interesting? Because they're not showing these people wailing and crying and in distress that this person has gone. They just accept it as a natural process of life. And the best way they can process this life is to let your life support another life.
Yeah.
And that's why they bring your body
absolutely.
up for the vultures to eat it, so that your body is not a waste at this point. It's now still a purpose for someone else's life, because your spirit, your energy, whatever it is gone, right? All you it is a vessel now. And I thought this is so, like when we're talking about this right now, it just really relates to me, the culture that a lot of us have grown up in, right? Where we put such significance on these things, and then there's other cultures who just view it as a natural cycle, and it's not a significant event.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I think maybe in Western culture, or at least in the United States, it's that way because we, for some reason, we think that we're supposed to live forever, or that death is like, okay, some type of punishment, if you will, you
Mm-hmm.
know. And it's just a part of life. Yeah, I mean, every single person experiences it, just like
Mm-hmm.
every single person experiences birth.
Mm-hmm.
Um, now, but what we a lot of times what we like, you think about the abortion debate, pro life,
Mm-hmm.
or pro choice or whatever, trying to be, say it politically correct. Um, and you think about, that it's like, okay, we want to make sure that this person gets here, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then, you know, our our system, I'm gonna say our culture, but our system subsequently just forgets about the children that come and say their parents put them up for adoption, or they don't want them, or whatever. Our system completely forget about it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then, and when I say forget about them, I'm not just talking about the babies. I'm talking about, even if they're in a position, they're on welfare, poor, whatever. We forget about the people. Like, our
Mm-hmm.
system takes the poor and it's like, okay, forget you guys. You know, you're poor because you're worthless, because you're not a suitable member of society, when our system actually creates people and makes them poor and keeps them poor. And it makes
Mm-hmm.
it difficult for a person to grow, to move from poverty to wealth.
Right.
You look at the housing projects in any city, you'll find that there are third and fourth generation people in those housing projects. And we look at the people and say, well, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
they got responsibility for it, but
Mm-hmm.
ultimately it's a system that perpetuates it, you
Yeah.
know? So the whole idea, of changing the system or creating a new system,
Mm-hmm.
it makes a lot of sense. When
Mm-hmm.
and it's all tied to money. It's all tied to money. We go back to that financial thing. It's all tied to money.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it's, if it's, I said the thing about it now. It's like, here in the United States, we just stopped making pennies. Um,
Yeah, we stopped doing that in Canada quite a few years ago. They're like, so
okay.
pennies still exist digitally, but they don't exist like physically. And like, I mean, they still exist, but they're not printing them anymore. Right. Yeah. But digitally,
Yeah.
like they'll
Yeah.
still charge you to the penny. But if you were to pay in cash in Canada, they would round up the price now to the nearest
Yeah.
five,
Yeah. What's
or round
funny
it
is
down
like,
depending on where it is. Right. But usually
yeah.
up.
Yeah. What's funny is like, okay, that you can eliminate the penny, and I'm saying this for a reason. You can eliminate the penny, but it's still there, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
In our society, you can eliminate the poor, but they're still there. You can ignore the poor, basically what I'm saying.
Mm,
They're still there,
mm-hmm.
you know. Instead of ignoring the poor, how do you move the poor from being poor to being, to knowing that they can have more, that they can experience more?
Mm-hmm.
And that's where things like this come. I've invited people. Some people have come on, and some people haven't. Some people come on and they're like, "Oh, that's weird," you know. And it's like, well, what's weird about it? Well, because it's not what and sometimes I invite people. It's like, oh man, what's the talk gonna be about today? Is it gonna be in the deep end like Drake was on Friday? Is it gonna be on the deep? Are they gonna be able to handle this or what? So I always give them the disclaimer. Look, maybe some heavy stuff that you're unfamiliar with that's being talked about, but just stay on, right?
Yeah.
Um, so, but I mean, really, just the everything that self-perfected represents is is I think is beneficial for our community and our society.
Mm-hmm. Wow. And I mean, this is such a great moment to be at when you're saying this, because I actually want to ask you this, because I ask everyone this question. If you were to go back to your 10-year-old self, what advice would you give him?
Man. Um. Okay, I got to tell you this story that I can answer that question. Okay.
Yeah, go for
So
it.
I was reading by the time I was 3. The first book that I ever remember that stuck in my memory was Tom Sawyer. Right.
Mm,
And I was my mom tells me, "Oh, I gave you that book when you were 2, and you were reading it when you were 3." Right.
wow.
So
Like a proper
and
book.
yeah, 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 yeah. It's funny because I remember people actually I remember this vividly. People giving me newspapers and saying, "Read this," and or
Mm,
holding it in front of me because they thought I had other stuff memorized. Like they thought I had Tom Sawyer memorized, so they would give me a newspaper and say, "Read this," and I
mm.
would read it. And they're like, I got I remember this guy. He was a friend of my aunt's. He was like, "Damn, that boy can read." So, but my entire childhood experience was like one that was mostly my imagination, right? Not in a negative way, but like imagining things and then trying to create it.
Mm-hmm.
Like we would make toys. We weren't wealthy, so we would make toys out of duct tape and other duct tape and sticks. We would make action
Mm-hmm.
figures, stuff like that. Um, and recognizing then that there was like infinite possibilities for life. We would talk, me and my cousins, we would talk all the time about what we could do, be, and have in life. Um, and my stepdad used to tell me, he would say, "You can do anything you want in life. Use your ingenuity. You can figure it out. You can figure out how to do it."
Mm,
So I would go back and tell my 10-year-old self, "Don't stop believing. You know, continue to believe that everything is possible and work like you know it's possible."
mm,
Because somewhere along the way, I stopped believing. You know, I stopped I stopped knowing, right?
mm,
Stop knowing. I see traits of that in my daughter, because she has this whole mentality that I cannot fail at anything I touch. You know, and she
mm.
does. She's um, she was one of 3 black girls that got her bachelor's degree from UNC Charlotte that year in statistics. There's a specific statistics. I can't remember exactly what it is, but um, when I was talking to her, I was like, "Do you know how major that is?" She was like, "What?" It was a class of about 300. I was like, "Listen, out of 300 people, it was 2 black girls. It's like it's 2 black girls that did that. Now it shouldn't be significant,
Mm-hmm.
but it is. I was like, you accomplished something that, um, statistically speaking, and I said, statistically speaking, shouldn't have."
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, "Oh, it's no big deal, right?" So I see shades of that belief, of that knowing that I could do whatever I want to do in her.
Mm,
So I would tell myself, don't stop believing, don't stop knowing,
mm,
and work as hard as you can to make it happen.
mm. That is great advice. Yeah. And I want everybody to take that and apply that to their lives now. Don't stop believing that you can do it, and believe
Yeah,
that you can do it.
yeah.
Wow.
I guess if I said it like my stepdad, you could do anything you want to. Use your ingenuity and figure it out. Um, like for instance, find somebody who's doing or close to doing what you want to do, right? Find out
Mm-hmm.
what the recipe is. Find out what the work is, and fall in love with the work.
Mm-hmm.
You know, believe that you deserve it because you do. You deserve to be, do, and have anything that you wish in life,
Mm-hmm.
as long as it's not hurting or harming anybody. And 9 times out of 10, what we desire in life doesn't harm anybody else.
Mm-hmm.
In,
Yeah.
in fact, in fact, a lot of times, what we desire in life can be an inspiration to somebody else. You know?
Mm-hmm.
We can't forget that either. It's like when we accomplish something, even if it's the first, especially if it's the first one, but when we accomplish something, all we're doing is showing somebody else that it can be done.
Mm.
that in and of itself is amazing. It's miracle work.
All right.
You know, when you think about what you're doing now, I'm sure you looked at other people who've done this and was like, okay, well, they did it. I got an idea now. I see I can do this as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I honestly had zero clue, but it was one of those things where it's just do it. Okay, figure it out. Okay. Like I had no clue. And I have to say, I mean, it's coming up to, I think we're about 10 months in now of doing this. Okay. And I got to say, there's still a lot I'm learning. Like I am not a master at, at putting these together yet. I'm not a master at getting, some of these things done. Every time the computer does an update on the software, I'm like trying to figure it out all over again. I'm like, I feel like I'm like back at square one again. I'm like, I just had it,
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, but go back and look. If you go back and look at your first one and look at the latest one, it's like, oh yeah, I guess I did grow. I guess I did get better.
Yeah, of course. I just and that's actually. That I think that is got to be one of the hardest struggles, at least for me, is you're saying, just to have the ingenuity and do it and figure it out. And the hardest struggle for me is that I never feel like I've got it,
Yeah.
So I
guess what? You never will get it.
You never will. Yeah. But I even said that to my sales manager the other day. She's like, you're doing great on this and blah, 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 blah. And I said, yeah, but I haven't had a perfect call yet. I said, every call I get off and I go, yeah, I could have done that better. Oh, I missed that point. Oh, I didn't say that, like every single call. She goes, yeah, but you're so like, you know what you're doing? Like you're doing so good. But it's just, she goes, by the way, she's been doing this for a number of years. She goes, by the way, you're never going to have a perfect call. I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah. Absolutely. But, you know the difference. You know the difference between perfection and flawlessness.
No. What? Well, tell me. So what yours is.
Okay, perfection is completeness. Like the definition of the word perfection is complete. Right. Or perfect is complete. The definition of flawlessness is without blemish, without stain, without flaw. Right. So you've probably had perfect interviews. They just weren't flawless. And what you're looking for is flawlessness. It's like, I forgot this, I left that out and all that. But it was perfect. Like the I keep going back to the Valley conversation, and I'm like, that was great. The other ones, it's like all the other ones, I'm like, man, these are great. And I'm thinking, okay, this is just something she transitioned into doing with the group. I didn't realize that you just started doing this, right? Mm-hmm. So, to look at it now and it's like, oh, wow. Okay, so even now, this is the base. And you never, like she said, you never will get it. And getting it, so having it, like, I'm trying to think of how to word this. Getting to a place where you can say, I've got it, you shouldn't ever want to get there.
Yeah.
Where are you going to go after that? When you've climbed Mount Everest, what are you going to do? Fly? Right?
That's right. I guess that's true, right? Like you got to sprout wings at that point, because then what?
Yeah, exactly. So always be in a place where you're getting it. I'm getting it. Yeah. I'm getting better and better. And your best is something you'll never reach, but you'll be a superstar. Yeah. The interviews will be greater. The conversations will be greater, and they'll be more profound, and they'll help more people. So just live this way. The best is yet to come.
Best is yet to come. I'm going to hold on to that. The best is yet to come. Yeah. And thank you for that. I truly appreciate that. And I do know that I am a better person today than I was 2 years ago or 3 years ago or 10 years ago. Like am I a perfect person? No, I know that. But am I a much better person than I was? Yes, I am. So.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the best that we can do. I mean, yeah, that's the best we could. Hence the name, self-perfected. A lot of people think, oh, you mean you guys are perfect? Well, we're becoming more complete. That's all it is. Self-perfected means self-completion.
Yeah.
So you're becoming more whole. So
Yeah.
that's, and you can always be better, but you're becoming more whole.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, amazing. Thank you. And
Thank you.
I mean, I was going to ask if there was any other words of advice or anything else you want to share, but I mean, feel free. But this is golden for me right now, and I appreciate you.
Yeah, no, I appreciate this. Again, like I was saying before we got on, I was actually surprised that I was even on the radar to do this. And again, if it helps one out of a million, then to me it was worth it. And I'm grateful for this platform. I'm grateful for the group, um, for the process. I think I'm a better person because of it. I think even though I don't get to see everybody on a regular, I think because of it, because of the group, I have people that I could say, "Hey, look, my kid's going through this. Y'all are around the same age. How about talking to them? You know, how about talking to my kids? And maybe what you say will resonate with them because I'm almost 30 years older than them, and they're not getting what I'm sharing. You know." So, and plus I feel like there are people here that I could trust to do that. In some walks in life, I wouldn't say that to other people.
Right. Wow. Well, thank you so much, Sean, for joining me here and having this conversation. I've truly appreciated your time and hearing everything from you today, because there's just been so many golden nuggets in this conversation that honestly, it's going to be such a pleasure to listen to this over and over again. So I want everybody else to come and take these little golden nuggets from here and share it with other people as well. But thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for the invite, and thank you for doing what you're doing.
No, my pleasure. Well, I'll see you soon. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Have a good day.